And this one we're going to look at, this is from ABC News. One thing that I wanted to look at with it is specifically the verbiage used by the reporter to bias you against Mamdani during this interview. So even though they're interviewing him, he's clearly framing it in such a way that he wants you to come out with a certain conclusion from what he's saying, regardless of the actual message that Mamdani is putting out.
You've had a heck of a week. I mean, the election, the candidates you endorsed won down the line, and you knocked off two Democratic incumbent members of Congress. Is this like a unique moment in New York, or is this the beginning of a national movement?
I think we are seeing a hunger that is not just felt by New Yorkers, but frankly by Americans from coast to coast for a new kind of politics, one that puts working people at the heart of it. And I think for far too long, what we as a party have been able to say to New Yorkers who are struggling is simply to explain why they're struggling, not actually offer them a vision for how to make life better. And these candidates, Brad, Daria Lisa, Claire, they ran campaigns that spoke to working people and that said life in the nation's most expensive city need not be this way any longer. And I can't wait to have them as partners in D.C. in that work.
So do you see yourself endorsing candidates outside of New York, or?
You know, for now, my focus is on this incredible slate of 3 congressional candidates, as you said, the 5 candidates I endorsed who ran and won, who are all going to be heading to Albany in the state legislature. But I do think, as you said, it's not just New York City where working people are asking themselves, why can't I afford my rent? Why can't I afford my groceries? Why can't I find enough money in my pocket for childcare, no matter how hard I work? And I'm so excited that these incredible soon-to-be Congress members will be helping to lead the fight across the country on making sure that working people are right there where they should be, which is the heart of the conversation.
The reaction from Democrats has been something. You've had some prominent Democrats.
This idea of continuous reinvention, I think, is really important. It doesn't end.
It
right?
does not end.
Welcome to Reinvented with Accenture.
Dismissive of what happened here. I mean, you had Senator Blumenthal say the effort to nationalize New York is going to fail. What happened in New York will be really irrelevant by the time of the elections in November. Hakeem Jeffries.
So something they do a lot in the media is they'll launder their own opinions by only bringing up quotes from people who agree with whatever their opinions are. That way, the reporter can look like their hands are clean. They're not the ones saying these awful things. They're just reporting on somebody else saying these awful things. It's something you see in Fox News, and you don't see it as much with ABC and MSNBC, but you're seeing it here, obviously. It's not that they don't do it. They just do it slightly less than Fox. So instead of him saying these policies aren't going to work, you're going to destroy New York, yada, 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 in spite of all the evidence that that is not the case, he's saying these other people have said that these policies are going to have XYZ outcomes that he wants the audience to take away from this interview, despite what the data is actually showing, which is why he doesn't show statistics, analysis from actual experts. He just talks about other politicians who have opinions about. Basically, he's running an opinion piece in the middle of the interview to bias the listener before he gives his answer.
Thing, saying that this is not indicative of what needs to happen in November. What do you make of that?
The idea of the Democratic establishment and Hakeem Jeffries saying this isn't what needs to happen in December tells me that they want to lose. They would rather lose to Republicans than win with a progressive candidate. So all that bullshit about vote blue no matter who only mattered when it was their candidate, when it was an establishment. They would not have run that if it was, let's say, Bernie or a more progressive candidate running for office. Then it would be, no, don't bother voting blue. We're going to let the Republicans win. Is basically what he's saying here, because when you have a populist message and a Democratic leader who says this isn't the direction we need to go, when there's so much energy behind that, they want to lose.
You know, I think that when you ask Americans what they're feeling in this moment, amidst reports of an economy that's strengthening, of a stock market that's booming, you will hear an exhaustion at having to try and make ends meet every single day, every single week, every single month, and that it's getting harder and harder. And so a message of fighting for working people, we don't have to nationalize that message. That is a national message. It's a national crisis. And for far too long, all we've had to say as a party is opposition to the current administration. What do we have to say beyond that? And what these candidates offer is a vision that extends beyond the midterms, it extends beyond 2028. It speaks to what makes so many of us proud to be Democrats. It speaks to a vision that goes back to a New Deal understanding of what working people deserve.
And something he's saying here really hits because what I've heard from talking to a lot of centrist Dems is also just that they're tired of hearing the we're going to take down Trump. Their only thing is being opposed to Trump. There's no positive vision for the future for what the Democrats are going to do. But that's all the establishment has to offer. That's all Kim Jeffries and Schumer have to offer. And sometimes they don't even offer that much because their opposition to Trump is not actually in what he's doing, but saying, oh, I oppose the way he's doing it when they agree with what he's doing. Because something you'll see a lot as well is they want Republicans to do the thing that they secretly want to do, but they don't want to catch the political flack for doing it. And we're seeing that happen again with the Iran war live, where they say, well, he should have invaded a different way. Because we saw during the last election, Kamala Harris saying Iran is the number one enemy of the US and being a war hawk when it came to Iran. They wanted to do it, they just didn't want the political flack for doing it. Which is antithetical to what the US public wants, obviously.
And I'll tell you that for too long, that kind of politics, you can only find it in history books, and we need to bring it back to the present day.
And you're hearing some not just dismissive, though. There's resentment. And this is from fellow Democrats who think that this could jeopardize Democratic chances in the fall. I mean,
they think that electing very popular candidates who have policies that are also very popular with the people of New York, who are following through with those, and the results of them are being very positive, could hurt their election chances. So basically, they made promises during the election that the people liked, and then they followed through and kept those promises, and they think that this will hurt them come fall.
got Josh Gottheimer, a Democratic member of Congress, says, many of us believe, as do I, if you're a socialist, you are not a Democrat. And in fact, they put out a manifesto today. I don't know, have you seen this thing?
Sounds pretty socialist to me.
It's not a communist manifesto. It's a moderate manifesto saying, we are capitalist, not socialist. We believe in a growing, fair, and competitive economy, entrepreneurship, ownership. I mean, this is a direct response. They've made it clear to what you did here on Tuesday.
Well, I mean, that's great, but what's a party if not its voters? And I'm proud to sit in front of you as the mayor of our city, having received more than 1 million votes, a little less than a year ago. And when we're talking about these incredible congressional candidates, they won their races, and they won their races with a vision of what politics should be, and one that actually...
And most of them won their races pretty handily. Like, we're talking 4 to 5 points ahead of their opponent, if not like Brad Lander, who won 2 to 1 in his race.
Speaks to working people. And for a lot of people who ask themselves, what does democratic socialism mean? And you can tell them the answer at a theoretical level. It's the choice to extend democracy from the ballot box the rest of their lives. But in terms of what it means over these last 7 months, we've seen a city with democratic socialist principles at the heart of it within our administration. And what we've delivered has been record lows when it comes to murders and shootings.
So is it pragmatic democratic socialism?
I think democratic socialism...
Yeah, the idea that you have to reframe it as pragmatic is his bias against socialism. So what he's saying is you can't have socialism where it's also low crime. So this must be some other thing, pragmatic socialism. What he doesn't understand is that this is what socialism would look like in a city like New York. Because he doesn't want his audience to associate socialism with things going well in New York. So he has to add this other stipulation on so that people can cling to that and say, well, this is pragmatic socialism, not socialism. Socialism's still a bad word. Pragmatic socialism, oh, well, the pragmatic part is carrying all the water, basically, is what he's trying to say here. Very disingenuous. It's just, as an interviewer, he's just a piece of shit. And you should realize that when you're listening to stuff like this. He comes across very soft, very moderated. but then you listen to what he's actually pushing with that moderation, and it's frankly disgusting
At the
and dishonest.
heart is pragmatic. Because if we cannot deliver for working people, then what is this for? I'm not interested in writing a manifesto or, frankly, in reading one. I'm interested in delivering, and that's exactly what we've been showing.
But they're saying that if you're a socialist, you're not a Democrat. I mean, is there room in the party for both of these views?
Yes, here I am.
Notice they just say moderate Dem to conflate the fact that it was one individual making this statement, and he's acting as if everyone is saying this. This isn't the view of most New Yorkers. This isn't even the view, I would say, of probably most Democrats. And yet he takes this one person giving one quote on it and pretends like he's voicing the people's opinion to Mamdani.
Here are so many more. And I think what makes our party...
And yet Mamdani is the one who got more than 1 million people to vote for him, not this guy.
A beautiful party is the fact that it's a big tent, that we have
But you've also said it has to be a party with a spine, with a backbone.
Yes,
So
even a tent...
Again, the establishment Dems can't understand that you can have a large tent and have a backbone. If you stand for something, people will line up behind that because they want people who stand for something. They want politicians who are going to push for the things that they want. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, but he's so ingrained in the establishment, he doesn't even understand that that's a concept with regular voters.
It has to stay up.
Yes, so, you know, does it have to stand firmly for these ideas that you're talking about that others are calling dangerous?
I think it has to.
That others are calling dangerous. Look at the voter base. What's the voter base saying? Which way are they leaning? Because it's more towards Mamdani than what this guy.
Stand for working people. And I think it has to be willing to fight for working people. And I think that there are some who are offended by the prospect of a party that knows who it fights for and goes every day to work for that. Because what we've seen over many years is a willingness to not only explain away the status quo, but frankly even to look to benefit from the status quo. And that's not what working people are looking for from our party.
As New Yorkers were going to vote, you said something interesting. You said the race for 2028 starts now, the presidential race. What did you mean by that?
Well, a lot of pundits ask me about this race and what it means and how to think about it. And at the core of Tuesday's results was a message from Democratic voters across the largest city in the United States of America about the kind of politics they want to see. And we know that we oppose the cruelty of the federal administration. What is it that we stand for beyond that?
So you can't just be anti-Trump,
Can't.
obviously.
You got to have something you are not just willing to stand up for, but that you're also willing to explain how this is relevant to working people. And I think this just comes back to the fact that I'm leading a city that's the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. I could end the sentence there and say that life is great for 8.5 million people, but it's also a city where 1 in 4 are living in poverty. And for far too many Americans, those contradictions have become their day-to-day life. And we need a party that's able to recognize the strengths of this economy and understand that it hasn't reached enough people.
Now, you know, there's been a lot of attention. One of the candidates you supported who won, who knocked off an incumbent Democrat, is Darlisa Villa-Chevalier. She said some very controversial things, including calling for the abolition of prisons, couldn't say whether or not somebody who had committed murder should be in prison, called for open borders.
People in the YouTube video aren't going to see it, but one of the comments I got was that it's very annoying that they have to add democratic to socialist, make it more acceptable to people in the West. When socialism in and of itself is democratic, it is taking the democratic process and pushing it to other aspects of your life. That's a great point. That's exactly the kind of obfuscation that I'm saying when he's talking about practical socialism, or he keeps adding prefixes to socialism rather than just saying this is what this is, because at the heart of it, he is implementing socialist and progressive policies, and the establishment and this interviewer specifically does not want those to be seen as good things. So he has to add a prefix before he says any of it, because by adding the prefix, he's saying it's not the socialism that's doing the good thing, which is true. That's correct. Hey, Jonathan, it is that it's in his mind, he's trying to make it the prefix before socialism that is the good thing that's being added into the mix, basically. Um, which is just a dishonest way of framing it. So every question is framed, and you'll notice he never just asks him a straight question. He always frames the question with 2 minutes of exposition, bringing in quotes from other legislatures that disagree with him, all to incentivize you to disagree before the question.
Against all deportations, including those of violent criminals. Are those positions that the Democratic Party could win on nationally?
I think what the Democratic Party can win on nationally is a focus on working people. And I think that what I saw from Daria Lisa when I would walk the streets of her district was a focus on what she describes as a politics of life. She would talk about how we have to invest in babies, not bombs. She's now going to represent what is one of the poorest districts in the United States of America. And what people in that district are exhausted by is a politics that has justified the spending of tens of billions of dollars in killing civilians overseas while working people are struggling just to do the basics.
But how does abolishing prisons or having open borders fit into that? I mean, do you see how those are ideas that a lot of your Democrats that are warning about what happened here say are toxic. Most of America won't go along with it, are bad ideas, that are dangerous ideas.
I think
the ironic part is that's not what most Americans are saying. Most Americans would say that the idea that Israel is a moral place and that we shouldn't condemn them for their actions is the immoral thing. Not calling that out would be bad.
what the focus of her race was, what the focus of her candidacy was about the struggle that working people are facing. And I think that we can have disagreements on policy positions. What we have to agree on is what are we fighting for and who are we fighting for? She showed that in her race, and I think that many people will come to appreciate that in her leadership to come.
So we can disagree on something as basic as whether or not there should be prisons?
That's
not your position.
There are prisons,
yes.
And what we're also showing in this city is that safety is not something that's up for debate. It's something that we're actually delivering on. And I'm proud to be the mayor of a city that currently has the lowest recorded number of murders and shootings in recorded history in New York City.
Yeah, so to talk about your comment, John, to be fair, not all socialist ideologies are democratic. That's correct. You can have two different pieces. For the most part, socialism, being the more economic side of things, is pushing democratic ideals into that space by allowing for more social programs to help people get back on their feet and democratizing work. That which actually kind of gets more into the ideology, but you can technically have like authoritarian socialism, but I think that leads into contradictions because what you're trying to achieve with socialism is taking those democratic ideals of making it a place where everybody can um, have a say in both their workplace, their government, and what they want to do, and getting those ingrained in more of society than just your elected officials. But it is in the same way that you can have a representative democracy or a republic and a democracy. They aren't necessarily exactly two sides of the same, but I think they're very interrelated, especially how they're talked about in U.S. politics, which is very different from how if you were going to do like a poli sci degree and look at the true definition. We're looking at the actual where the rubber meets the road, what people are actually talking about when political pundits are saying these words, because they have a lot of underlying context that they've ingrained over years of doing this media tour for the public that I think gets lost when you get that deep in the academia.
So there was also a take, it's not just Democrats, you've probably heard what President Trump had to say about you and about the candidates you supported, and he warned that if socialists win, and he calls you communists, but you will start living in squalor, there'll be no food, no housing, no military, no law and order, there'll be nothing, and he had a few other choice words. By the way, he also said he still likes you. But what do you make of what he? I mean, the Republicans are going to make you the poster child for the Democratic Party.
Let them. We don't have to ask ourselves what life looks like if a socialist wins. I won last November, and over the course of these last 6 months, what we've delivered for working people are the very things we were told were impossible. We've delivered free childcare for 2-year-olds for the first time in New York City history. We've delivered tens of millions of dollars back to tenants who were taken advantage of by bad landlords. We've delivered 165,000 potholes being paved. And we've done all of these things while also delivering the lowest recorded crime in our city's history. That's what it looks like to have democratic socialism. And what you're seeing is that New Yorkers experienced this for 6 months and made the decision that they wanted to see more of it on the national stage as well.
Can a democratic socialist get elected president?
I think a democratic socialist can get elected anywhere across this country for any position.
So this electability thing is another one piece that's brought up. Obviously, Mamdani is saying, you could elect them for any position anywhere, which makes a lot of sense. Like, they voted for it initially. They followed through on the promises. Those promises that were kept are doing good things for New Yorkers, so they keep voting for it. That's a really simple concept in politics. They voted for something, that thing was followed through on. It turned out to be good for the general population, so they kept voting for that thing. And if you follow that through, progressives want a lot of things that most of the U.S. wants. If you elect a progressive and they're able to do what they want to on a more national scale, then they could follow through on those promises. That's going to be a lot harder to do because you have a lot of entrenched opposition to them. But if they could do that and then they get these same positive results like what Mamdani has gotten as mayor of New York, then you would obviously see more and more of them elected and you get the snowball rolling down the hill.
What I think we need to bring is a focus on working people.
And that's the direction that the party should go in terms of selecting a candidate for 2028.
I think the direction that the party should go in is how best to fight for working people. I think we need to have a platform and a vision that doesn't sound as if it was cooked up by consultants, but instead one that you would say in response to someone who's asking, why can't I afford my rent? Why can't I afford my groceries? Why can't I afford my childcare? We need to make clear who we stand for, how we're going to stand for them, and that we're actually willing to fight for them when the going gets tough.
Obviously, Israel was a big issue in these races. Not the only issue, but a big issue. Is there room in the Democratic Party for candidates, officials who support Israel, not just support Israel, but support military aid for Israel? This was a huge issue for you.
Well, I think what we've seen is that the time for us as elected officials to pronounce what the party should be is one that should come to an end, and we should let Democratic voters themselves take the lead. And we've seen on Tuesday evening, we saw Democrats turn out in districts across the city to make clear that they were tired of tens of billions of dollars being spent in our taxpayer dollars to violate international law, to kill thousands of civilians. And you and I know that.
So going back to the topic we talked about earlier in the stream, probably won't be in the YouTube video, but I think it was 129 journalists were killed in 2025, the most of it, and 2/3 of those were from Israel. So you want to talk about people having freedom of speech, popular choice, and then Israel cracking down on that. We're paying for the bombs that are killing more journalists than anywhere else in the nation. And why are they killing more journalists? Because they don't want to have freedom of the press when they're committing an atrocity.
Right now, the way that Palestine is described is as if there is a ceasefire. That's the language that's typically used. Yeah. More than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed in that ceasefire. And what New Yorkers want to see is a politics of conscience, a politics of clarity, a politics of conviction. And to follow international law, to believe in the humanity of all people, it shouldn't be a journey too far. And I think that our party needs to hear what Democrats are telling it.
Democratic Socialists of America now says they no longer favor a two-state solution. Is that the way you see it as well? The idea of two states, Palestinian, Jewish?
I think at this point, the two-state solution is dead just because it's very clear if you had two states, if one state just wants to sit there and genocide the other one the entire time, that's not a feasible way for them to live to come. I don't really know what the resolution would be to this because Israel essentially needs to be neutered and not able to do what they are currently doing in Palestine, because as long as they can do that, you're going to have the violence because the Israelis will get the violence from the jump, as we saw in Gaza, as we saw in Lebanon.
state side by side living in peace?
The way I see it is equal rights for all people. And I think that that's the truth for Israel. It's the truth for any country in the world. And frankly, as we're coming up close to the 250th anniversary of our nation, one of the things that makes me proudest to be an American is the belief that equal rights are at the bedrock of our notion of what it means to be an American.
And the idea of a Jewish state, Israel is a Jewish state, that's in the charter. That's the way it is now. Do you support that?
I've said time and again that I support the state of Israel as a state with equal rights. I believe that any state that
But as
preferences...
a Jewish state is the question.
I think any state that privileges one religion over the other is one that I can't tell you I support, whether it be Israel or Saudi Arabia or anywhere else. And a lot of that comes back to a fundamental belief that we should all be considered equal no matter what our faith is.
How big a problem, you said it's rising, is anti-Semitism in this city?
We've seen anti-Semitism rise in this city. We've seen the fact that Jewish New Yorkers comprise a minority of our city's population and yet continue to constitute a majority of the hate crimes that have been purveyed in this city. And that's something that's unacceptable. It's something that we will never come to see as if it is a part of life. It's something that has to be fought and rooted out of every one of the 5 boroughs.
What did you think when Dan Goldman...
And here's something that gets overlooked, but I've talked about it a number of times now, but I think this is a good place to put it in. Anti-Semitism is on the rise in the U.S. because of Israel. When you have a state that says we are a Jewish ethno-state and we are doing things because we are a Jewish ethno-state, and then those things that they're doing are obviously horrible, you're getting a rise in anti-Semitism because people are buying into the idea that that means that Jewish people are doing these. Now, that's incorrect, but that's a misinterpretation that Benjamin Netanyahu wants to perpetuate, because the more they can point to and say there's rising anti-Semitism, therefore we need a safe place for the Jewish people, then he can claim that Israel is that safe place for it, and then perpetuate more violence, thus making more people aligned against that religion, and the system perpetuates. So it's an anti-Semitism that Israel wants to create because it benefits their narrative while they're doing their genocide by basically making it, it bolsters their argument. And so that's something they've been perpetuating since the start of the war. When the people that are opposed to it are just saying, I'm anti-ethno-state. Whether that's a Jewish ethno-state, a Muslim ethno-state, it's just a bad thing for them.
That coffee shop in Brooklyn said that they wouldn't serve him because of his support for Israel. You have a problem with, I mean, the idea of, of a...
So one of the comments I have, it won't show up on the YouTube video, but does Islam commit terrorism in the name of Islam justify the rise of Islamophobia? That's the misinterpretation that I'm talking about. So what ISIS does is they do it and then do it in the name of Islam, and then they use that Islamophobia to recruit more people into ISIS. I'm saying that that's the bad thing. That's the misinterpretation. That's the essentialization that's wrong. So by them doing that, and even though they are Islamic, they use that to create more Islamophobia, which is incorrect interpretations of what it is, because it's an extremist group that doesn't actually represent Islam, just like Israel doesn't actually represent the Jewish people. They're using that disingenuously because by stoking that fear, they can create more of a power base within their own communities to recruit more people into the IDF or into ISIS. Now, the IDF doesn't have to worry about recruiting as much because they draft people. But no, I'm not blaming ISIS for the rise of Islamophobia. I'm saying they're using it as a tool to make it easier for them to recruit and easier for them to move in the spaces that they move in to accomplish the goals they want to accomplish. Goals which, obviously, just like the IDF, I disagree with from the jump. But no, that's a good point, and I'm not great at explaining it, so I appreciate you, John, bringing that up in chat so I can kind of flush out that position better. Let's get through the last couple minutes of this video, and then I've been going for a couple. Similar with Israel too. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about, where Israel will do the exact same thing ISIS will, where by claiming that they represent this entire group, and they're doing this horrible thing on behalf of that entire group, they can stoke fears around that group and then use that to try and insulate that same group. In this case, with Israel, it's Jewish people. In ISIS's case, it's Islamic people.
Establishment like that saying they're not going to serve somebody if they support Israel.
I've said that I have political disagreements with Congressmember Goldman. I do believe that that's a response that goes beyond that.
So that's not the right kind of thing.
No, I think it's much better to keep that critique in the way that we've done it.
Okay, so we're just about out of time. I got to ask you. I noticed that you're turning 35 soon, right?
In a few months, yes.
So you now hit one of the constitutional requirements to run for president. But there's another one that says you have to be a natural-born citizen. You were not born here.
Yes.
But do you think that's something that should be changed in the Constitution? It would take an amendment, but do you think that we should change that?
No.
No?
I think the Constitution looks good the way it is.
Just the way it is.
Just the way it is. I'm very excited to focus on New York City, but thank you for reminding me of my upcoming
35
mortality.
years old. 30.
And I think one thing to note here too is just, and I knew this from the jump with Mamdani, that he isn't a natural-born U.S. citizen. We're so far off of being able to have any kind of representation that would be able to make an amendment from either side, because you would need 2/3 of Congress. That it's kind of absurd to say it. He's just saying it because obviously Mamdani is very popular. But the idea that this journalist is fluffing him up after he just spent this entire interview disingenuously framing every single question that he did is just a narrative way for him to show that he can agree with the populist and end on a good note, and it leaves the viewers thinking he isn't as dishonest as he. So awesome. Made it through the video. I've been going about 2.5 hours, but I have to get ready for something this evening. So thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us and active participation, man. And so the last question here. I don't think there should be any hate speech regulation or legislation. My only problem with not having any hate speech regulation or legislation, which is just that it has a chilling effect. So if you have certain hate speech that is unregulated, let's say you're allowed to make threats against people, what you could do is you could have a minority of people, like let's say, and we've seen this in U.S. politics before. The Ku Klux Klan would come out and say, we're going to hang that guy. So you'd have somebody who speaks up, who is voicing an unpopular opinion, but one that's pro-civil rights, something like that. And then, well, that's part of hate speech, is the violent speech. That's part of the free speech. But if you're separating hate speech and violent speech, then hate speech would still have a chilling effect on people who it's targeted against. I probably would agree with you if we're separating out nonviolent in general. That one's like I'm pretty pro people can have a lot of different speech. Like I'm not for people shutting down Charlie Kirk or anything like that. I don't think that certain people should be given platforms, but that's more of a pragmatic stance than a legislative stance. I don't think those people, like let's say Charlie Kirk, should be legislated out of having a platform to speak on, but they shouldn't get that. Like it's like kind of like the just world versus what the laws should actually. In a just world, people like that who are horrible human beings wouldn't get a platform, but they shouldn't be disallowed from having the platform, because the world that you would create by disallowing them legally from having that platform would be worse. But yeah, awesome. Y'all have a great day. I will chop some of these up and put them on the YouTubes. And thank you so much for watching my video. It'd be great if you could leave me a like, subscribe, maybe a comment, and you should be seeing a video pop up anywhere on screen right now that you can click on to get some more content. Thank you again. Have a great day.